Hello and welcome to the Second Tier Podcast. I'm Ryan Dilks and I'm joined by the Steve Bruce to my Carlos Corberan. It's Justin Peach.
Good day to you, Ryan.
Justin, here we are once again doing our gradings for each championship side in the division from this past season. It did make me wonder. I mean, I haven't had to worry about grades for several years now. What was your worst grade?
My worst grade?
From GCSE and or A-level?
Ooh,
I don't know what the American equivalent is, by the way, for our American listeners, so I apologise for that. But what about for our British listeners?
My A-level history, I got a D overall in my A-level history, but I had to retake a test, an exam, because I failed the first one, and I failed the second exam. I got a U on it, and that's the first time.
A U?
Yeah, it's the first time I ever got a U on it. Mainly because there was building works going on next door, banging against the sports hall. I was very disappointed, and look, I'm thriving now, aren't I?
That's
aren't I? Aren't I?
Moving on. I mean, my grades. Because I have ADHD, it meant revision was an absolute bloody nightmare. And that's only become more apparent as time has got on. But I remember at A-level, I got DED. So my grades spelt out my career at that point, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely dead. Well, yeah, at that point, maybe.
Yes, well, that's how it felt at the time. Still managed to get into uni because they felt sympathy for me. And here I am today, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Number One Championship Podcast, the second tier. Thank you for joining us wherever you are. Yes, this is part 2 of our season grading, where we're going through each championship side and giving them a grade from A+ to F for, if you need explaining on that any further, then I got it. Yeah. But we've gone through, the first half of the teams alphabetically in the championship for the past season, from Birmingham to Millwall. That means in this episode, we're going through Norwich City to West Bromwich Albion. So we'll kick things off with the first team, which, as I just said, is Norwich City. Justin, what grade have you given them?
I've gone with B for Norwich.
I've gone with A-.
Have you really?
Yeah, which is strange because I'm giving them an A-, but we're talking about a club here who have just sacked their manager, and I'm not really surprised that they've sacked the manager.
Yeah, and they've not been promoted after really, really failing to live up to a hype during the playoffs. The amount of attacking quality that they've got barely laid a glove on Leeds in the playoffs.
That's true, but I'm looking at the season as a whole,
absolutely.
not just 2 games.
No, absolutely. But I think what we saw, it's just those variables as to, you ranking Norwich so highly and actually then faltering almost significantly and then sacking the manager almost immediately after the playoffs. David Wagner was barely on the team coach before that news broke. I think it was quite astonishing. But the reason why I've given them a B, I think they've outperformed my expectations. I expect them to finish low in the championship. And they've had to deal with a lot of injuries as well. Josh Sargent was injured for basically the first half of the season, and he still managed to pick up results. And there's a lot going against David Wagner as well. And he completely went against the grain in the championship and managed to sort of absorb the pressure that was from the fans, from owners, from media. And he stuck it out and he delivered a top 6 finish, which I think is just, quite astounding, really.
Yeah, well, I thought Norwich could have quite a problematic season if they stuck with David Wagner, and it could actually get a bit nervy at times, because I just did not really like the direction the club was going in. But, they've got 2 extremely, extremely talented players who have managed to do a lot of the hard work this season. That shouldn't take anything away from David Wagner, though, who has managed to completely confound a lot of expectations this season. So fair dues to him for that, but it's clear the club wants to go in a different direction, so it wasn't a surprise, really, that they got rid of him and got someone else in. And we now know who that someone else is. FC Nordsjælland manager Johannes Hoff Thorup. We'll be honest, don't know much about him, but considering Norwich have been linked with quite a few managers, quite a few big-name managers as well over the past few weeks, including the likes of Will Still, who's someone who comes up on a lot on this show, considering he's never managed in the Championship, but he still comes up quite a lot. He was seen at the Norwich training grounds, but despite that, reports say that the new sporting director of Norwich, Ben Napper, Thorup was his number 1 choice all along, which shows he really bloody rates this guy. So that's exciting, I suppose, isn't it?
Well, it is for Norwich because there's a clear plan there, isn't there? I think that's the key thing. I think that's what fans are going to want to see. you don't want to be you don't want the uncertainty. And a lot of Stuart Webber, what he delivered was again similar to a lot of people really in high positions in the Championship at clubs. Is they blow a lot of hot air, and that's what Stuart Webber did. He didn't really back it in recruitment. The direction of the club was pretty poor. So I'm not surprised Norwich fans felt a little bit of apathy towards their own club. But now you've got Ben Napper who's coming in with a clear I wouldn't say clear philosophy, but there's a direction in which he wants to go in. Because what I have heard about the new manager is he does like to progress young players, which is a big thing. Norwich have got a really good academy, a really talented academy that's going to bring through a lot of players. So if you've got a manager there who's willing to do that, that's huge. That's a big thumbs up, and I think that's the direction they're going to go in. Then brilliant. But I think the thing with Norwich is, that's really what they need. They need a clear philosophy and style again, because that's what got lost under Stuart Webber.
Yeah, people who know Thorpe a lot better than I do are raving about this appointment. They really, really like the guy. So that's exciting. And I'll take their word over anything that I'll probably learn about him as time goes on. So that's promising. But, the foundations are there with Norwich, because we have been talking about how, they have got some very talented players in this squad. The aforementioned Sarah and Sargent. If they manage to keep hold of them, then that's thrilling.
Yeah.
And then they've also got, kind of a level below that with the likes of Boy Saeens.
Johnny Rowe.
I'd say Johnny Rowe's probably actually in the upper tier, but is he going to stay as well is the other question. But, Boslino, Nunes as well. It's at the back where the questions lie, and David Wagner's...
very old.
Well, it's very old, and David Wagner certainly learned at times this season that defence isn't the strongest. So that's something that will have to be improved. But look, we've seen this season that if this is a season where Norwich haven't been as good as the owners expected, I suppose, and they thought it was not good enough, so David Wagner deserves sacking, then if they think they can do better, then that's promising, I guess.
I think almost attacking it comes into two different categories, doesn't it? I think you've got David Wagner delivered a chance of promotion, big thumbs up, and I don't think anybody expected that position, especially at the start of last season. Especially maybe even Norwich fans wouldn't have expected it. But I think the direction they want to go in now is very philosophy driven, and I think that's a huge thing. I don't think David Wagner is going to be that sort of guy. He's going to come in and want to get results and have that chance of promotion. Whereas I think the new manager Ben Napper as well, the sporting director, I think there's a vision there, and I think that's so much probably more important for a Championship club than
it needed a refresh, didn't it?
It desperately needed a refresh.
It really did, because it went very stale under Stuart Webber. So Ben Napper coming in, he's clearly put his imprint on this team very early on, and that's promising to see at the very least. Let's go to the next club, Plymouth Argyle. Justin, first of all, what grade have you got before we get on to other matters?
Yeah, I've gone with C.
I've gone with C as well.
Yeah, it's the fact that the first half of the season very much an A, wasn't it? They were competing high up the Championship table. Stephen Schumacher left, Ian Foster came in, and then it became very F. So I think a C balances it out quite nicely. So again, it's a fairly easy one to assess. But I think with Plymouth, what went wrong was appointing Ian Foster. I don't think there was a good continuation there. I know the club said that he interviewed well, and then nothing that he said in his interview really became apparent during his time at the club, which I think is quite telling and quite incredible. And also, Ian Foster sucked the life out of that team, didn't he? They were such an exciting young side, and then they became really boring and bland, and losing games. There was just it just felt like there wasn't a freedom of expression there, and I think that was a key reason as to why Plymouth fell away.
Well, it is. There's no denying that at all. And I fancied Plymouth to maybe surprise a few people and actually finish around mid-table, and it looked like they were on course for that until it all went completely tits up under Ian Foster. And then from that point, it was just trying to, salvage a place in the Championship. And they got there just in the end. But at the start of the season, Plymouth fans would have taken staying up in the division, and they got there in the end. So C, D, you're looking in that kind of ballpark, aren't you, when you're grading really Plymouth's season?
Yeah.
Let's get on to their upcoming season, Justin. They've appointed as their new head coach, Wayne Rooney.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Wayne Rooney's a hard one. I've criticised him a hell of a lot, and I think he admitted his time at Birmingham there was almost too many cooks with the amount of coaches that he brought with him. Obviously, Ashley Cole and John O'Shea came in, and that was a problem.
And the head chef was absolutely shite at his job.
Yeah, the head chef was essentially a microwave. He's pushing buttons on a microwave and doing a really bad job of it. That wasn't he, old Wayne. But I think the thing that what I was telling there is the coaches that are at Plymouth are staying at Plymouth. So Wayne Rooney's literally just coming in. Interestingly, he's been appointed as a head coach, despite him being a manager type and admitting to being a manager type rather than a head coach. That's quite intriguing and quite worrying, actually. But Kevin Nanskivel and Simon Arnold are his coaching staff. I know Plymouth fans are already going to be going, like, yeah, we know this. But I think the key thing there is there's not going to be a big upheaval in coaching staff. He's not bringing his own people. It's people that have been at Plymouth for a period of time, although Simon Arnold was appointed recently. So that's a key thing there. Other than that, all I've got is criticisms for Wayne Rooney. I don't think it's a particularly inspiring appointment because Birmingham was a disaster, DC United wasn't great, and Derby was shrouded in, administration and financial issues.
Yeah, it made it hard to judge that job,
Yeah, exactly.
didn't it? If I was a Plymouth Argyle fan, I would be alarmed at this appointment. I think it's absolutely bamboozling that Plymouth have decided to do this off the back of what was undoubtedly an absolute horror show at Birmingham. I just cannot really understand what Plymouth are thinking here. And I've been, praising Plymouth's hierarchy relentlessly over the past year for how well run a club they are, how, screwed on their heads seem to be. But this is almost making me take all that back because I just don't understand the thinking here at all. How can you look at the job that he did at Birmingham and think, yes, this guy is the man to take us forward? I think the Plymouth job is a really exciting one because you're backed by good recruitment, really good recruitment. And so if you give the opportunity to a young, promising coach, then it's worth the gamble because they could be the person who takes them forward into the future. But Wayne Rooney, what are they thinking? Why have they looked at that Birmingham job and thought, yes, this is the guy for us? And yes, he did do a good job at Derby before, considering all the circumstances surrounding that. But at Birmingham, his style of play was just all over the shop, and he just spent half the time just criticising the players for not being fit enough and just blaming everyone else but himself.
I'm going to throw a bit of a caveat at you. And what's interesting here is about the ownership and the decisions they make in terms of managerial appointments. Ryan Lowe was appointed when the club were in League Two, and obviously he took them to League One. Did a really good job. That was the first big appointment. Stephen Schumacher was his assistant, and then he took over after Ryan Lowe left for Preston. So really, there's a continuity already there. So actually, have the owners had to make a big decision in terms of managerial appointments?
Well, the first big decision was Ian Foster, and that obviously went disastrously.
Yeah, and then now, the next one is Wayne Rooney.
This one seems to be also a disaster.
Exactly.
If you turned around and said to me, who would be the worst realistic appointment that Plymouth could make next season, or any championship club for that matter, I'd probably say Wayne Rooney in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way. But they've gone and done it, and now I just don't know what to think anymore with Plymouth.
You took it seriously, did you? Shit.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it was the best appointment they could have made. The proof will be in the season that comes up and the pre-season and how they recruit as well. I think another telling thing is Wayne Rooney fell out with Morgan Whittaker at Derby. Wayne Rooney sold Whittaker to Swansea, and then his career started from there really. So that's going to be interesting to how Morgan Whittaker takes that appointment as well, which is an interesting thing. So yeah, I'm not particularly inspired, would be the polite way of saying it. It's another Scouser as well, which is telling. Ryan Lowe, Stephen Schumacher, Ian Foster, Wayne Rooney, all Scousers.
They love it.
Yeah.
It's as far away from Liverpool as you can pretty much get, but they just love harrowing Scousers. Let's move on then, Justin, to manager you've just mentioned, Ryan Lowe and Preston North End. What grade are you giving them?
I'm torn on this one. I've gone with a B-.
I've gone with a B.
Okay.
So there's no need to be torn, mate. We're pretty much on the same footing there.
Nice.
I think it's actually been a really encouraging season for Preston, ultimately. Because in past seasons, they've been close to the top six, but never actually looked like getting anywhere near there. And at times this season, there have been moments where I've thought, Preston actually could be a shout for the top six. Obviously, didn't get there in the end, and the season fizzled out quite dramatically in the final few games. But I think it's been an encouraging season.
I agree. I think the only thing that holds me back a little bit, and maybe a little bit hesitant, because what I was thinking a C+ to begin with. The reason why I then carried them over into a B is because of where they finished and how they finished and how close they were to the playoffs with the amount of games that were left in this season. 4 games to go, still within shout of playoffs, I think is an incredible achievement from Ryan Lowe. But at the same time, the long periods of inconsistency and poor results really stopped me from being massively convinced by this Preston side. And another reason why as well is the fact that their style of play in terms of creating chances just isn't sustainable enough. They are one of those sides who, if you like your XG, they outrun it, they outperform it. And again, it comes down to sustainability and how can they carry that on and keep carrying that on and keep being a side who essentially concede a lot of chances and don't create a load themselves. Those things do balance themselves out. Wasn't the case here. But I think on the other side of it, Ryan Lowe deserves a lot of credit because he withstood a storm of fan frustration at his style of play. And in addition to that, he's brought players on. Liam Lindsay has been fantastic since Ryan Lowe was appointed, or since Ryan Lowe came in. Jordan Story's been brilliant this season. Mads Jensen has shown glimpses. Liam Miller was an inspired loan signing. So yeah, I think there's a lot of formula there, but I think the thing that holds Preston back mainly is investment, really.
Well, that's been the issue for a long time, hasn't it? And Preston fans have been saying they want a lot more investment. Whether that's the right thing to do or not, throw the bathwater out the window along with the baby, that kind of thing, is maybe not the right thing to do because it's all about being a stable Championship side, and I think that is what Preston will continue to do.
Yeah.
Or does that mean they're going to be troubling the top 6 again next season? Difficult to say, really, isn't it? The fact that Alan Brown, who's probably been the best player this season, is more than likely not staying around now, isn't a massive cause for encouragement. Liam Miller, is he going to be back next season? I don't know. Mm-hmm. There's certainly some talented players at Preston, but there isn't, much star quality there. And there's just a lot of 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 players at Preston. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
And I think it's Ryan Lowe's style of play who blends them together and gets results. And it really is just let's get results. It's results driven. I know we sometimes laud Ryan Lowe for being we want to see a good attacking side out of him because we know there's potential there because we saw it at Plymouth. But I think Steven Schumacher did have a lot of weight behind that. But I think defensively they do show they're a well organised side. But at the same time, I don't think we'll probably see the potential of Ryan Lowe until we see consistency and a group of players there to get that out of him, and that's a big thing.
I think consistency is the big thing, isn't it? Because there have been so many times this season where you just look at Preston's form and there's lots of W's and not many L's in between that, and then suddenly it's L L L L L. It's like that Sam Smith song, la 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 la, and it's just. It's just, we need to see kind of a season similar to what West Brom have had, where they have just been, pretty consistent throughout, because otherwise Preston are just going to continue to be in that kind of bracket where it's, 8th till 12th, and we just don't see much progression on that count anyway. Let's move on to Queen's Park Rangers. What grade have you gone with them, Justin?
I've gone with a B.
I've gone with a B as well.
Yeah, I think they've had a very good season. When you consider how much of a disaster it could have been, and how much of a disaster it was looking like it would be under Gareth Ainsworth, and how restricted they were in the summer transfer window, I think that's something that really does need bearing in mind when considering this. I think they had a really good season, especially under Marty Cifuentes. It probably would have been higher if Marty Cifuentes was in charge at the start of the season. It very much probably would have been an A because of what he's delivered in his time at the club so far. So, yeah, I've gone with B. I think they've outperformed my expectations, everybody's expectations of what they had at the start of the season.
Yeah, if you look at it through the context of the start of the season, it looks like they've just stayed up. But then when you keep in mind that they were in serious peril back in January time when Marty Cifuentes was still getting to grips with this team, then 18th place is obviously a fantastic result, particularly when you consider who was in charge at the start of the season.
Yes.
Drinking Monster Energy drink all the time. I think a B is fair because it's not been a season where they've completely confounded expectations, but it's been better than expected. I think that's fair to say.
Mm-hmm.
But with Marty Cifuentes in charge, hopefully next season, now I wouldn't say it's completely set in stone, but it's hopefully going to be the case. I would say there's certainly a cause for optimism at QPR. I won't go completely crazy with that optimism, but certainly a cause that the club is starting to once again go in the right direction after a season and a bit, maybe 2 seasons of just looking pretty dire.
Yeah, I think with the squad that they've got, compared that to their budget and their lack of manoeuvrability, I'd expect them to have again this summer. I think just staying in the Championship will be a huge achievement for next season. Because I know Cifuentes, I rate him so highly. I like him a lot. I mean, keeping hold of him would be a massive, massive job for QPR this summer, because there's a lot of teams who are going to be without a manager.
If they didn't have Marty Cifuentes next season,
I'd go bottom 3.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they don't have a striker, a confident striker for starters. That's a big thing. They got an aging squad as well.
You've also got the uncertainty around Elias Chair, which we won't get into on this episode.
It's just a lot of uncertainty, but as Cifuentes gives me a lot more optimism, and that carries a massive weight when considering what QPR are capable of next season.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. If they did lose Marty Cifuentes, that would be a massive blow. I mean, I've seen some QPR fans say he is the best manager we've had in a long, long time. And I think that just goes to show like how much of an influence and how much he's transformed this QPR squad. And I don't think you can really emphasise that enough. But if they were to lose that, then it could be a case of them going back to square one, couldn't it? And be once again looking over their shoulder.
Yeah, well, exactly. And that's the worrying thing. That's a big worry, because QPR fans haven't had a lot to shout about over the past couple of years. Yeah, Mark Warburton delivered that, was it 10th or 11th place finish?
They were in the top 6 for a long time, weren't they? But then drifted out towards the end.
Exactly, and that was disappointing, obviously. The way it ended, and obviously the subsequent lack of building on that is a big thing. So for me, yes, if Fuentes, he carries a lot of that weight.
Yeah, it's a lot of faith to put in a manager, though, isn't it? And you can't really, put that much faith in one manager when the squad also has so much churn potentially, coming its way, with Chris Willock probably heading out the door this summer. Elias Chair, as we alluded to, we'll stay clear of that. I mean, Jake Clark-Salter has been linked with a move away as well. So there's a lot going on there. And as you say, it's an ageing squad. So a lot of recruitment needs to be done there. And you're asking, if that recruitment doesn't happen, you're asking for Marty Cifuentes to pull off another minor miracle in the space of
46-game season. That's difficult.
It is very difficult. So to ask him to do that twice in the space of 2 seasons is quite the ask. And maybe he'll be thinking, well, if I'm not getting the back in here, why don't I just go somewhere else? And I don't think QPR fans would probably blame him for doing that. Let's not spend too much time on this one, Justin. The next one is Rotherham United.
A+.
What have you really given them?
It's an F.
Can we give an ungraded? I know in the last episode we gave Ipswich the Nobel Peace Prize. I don't know what the opposite it would be.
Get out of our division. I know I say it like an Aussie there, but but yeah, look, it's been a disaster. It's, as much as this segment here on Rotherham is a disaster, the season was worse. There's no way of buttering it up. It's been terrible. Recruitment was terrible last summer. Matt Taylor didn't do a great job.
Just everything was terrible.
Yeah.
I struggle to actually think of anything that wasn't terrible.
Jordan Hugo's goal against Southampton, was it? That was good.
That was good. I do kind of think that was just a case of just put your foot through it and it's gone in the top bin.
You don't buy a ticket, you don't go to the show.
Very true. But I genuinely, I'm just trying to think now. I'm trying to put like a positive spin on this, because obviously we've been very critical of Rotherham all season, which of course we have to be.
They've won 5 games.
There's nothing really to be too positive about them with. But I genuinely struggle to think of anything that's not been terrible about this season. That's why, and even an F, considering we've given a couple of other teams in these gradings Fs, it feels like it's harsh on those teams that we've given them Fs.
I was going to say, the likes of, I can't remember who give it Fs to now, but yeah, you are right. It is,
Birmingham and Huddersfield it was.
I think both been relegated, but it does seem harsh against those, because Rotherham collected 27 points, 23 fewer than Birmingham, for example. So yeah, it does seem harsh on them now. But look, Rotherham were poor, recruitment was poor. The way they handled the season was terrible. There's just no way of buttering up. Steve Evans is back, which is exciting because he's funny. That's it, really.
Well, it is interesting with Rotherham, because even though we are, still in May, they have signed 5 players already, which is
that's a good thing. That
is
really
good.
good
Yeah,
thing.
it clearly shows that the club are like, okay, this season has been an absolute nightmare. We need to try and amend this as soon as possible. So this is kind of a sign that they are accepting that, and Rotherham have been this kind of yo-yo club for many years now, haven't they, between the Championship and League One? They'll be hoping that continues in this respect and that they come back up to the Championship at the first time of asking. I think a lot of work still needs to be done, even though they've done quite a bit of work already, and we'll leave that there. Justin, this is an interesting one. Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah.
What grade?
If I was to be really generous, I'd give them a B, but I think a C plus I still think is
really?
quite fair.
I thought you were going to go the other way and say an A.
It's quite easy to get carried away with Danny Rowe's form at Sheffield Wednesday. We've got to consider how much of a disaster they were in the summer with the handling of Darren Moore, how much of a disaster they were with under Isco Munoz.
Does that not
as well.
kind of make it more remarkable that they stayed up, though?
It does, but again, you're trying to sort of measure the entire season. They were the worst team. They had the worst start in Championship history under Isco Munoz.
That's fair.
And that's something you got to carry weight with. You can't throw everything at Danny Rowe and say he's done this, because even QPR weren't as bad as Sheffield Wednesday were. So that's why their score's a little bit higher, their grade's a little bit higher. But Wednesday, so bad for 10 or 11 games, and then Danny Rowe comes in and delivers what he delivered. An A plus start of grading for Danny Rowe, and then as bad as it could be for Isco Munoz, really.
Yeah, kind of Rotherham levels, really, isn't it? It's basically the same as QPR, I think, where if you look at it without context, they finished 20th, which is ultimately survival. But if you look at it through the prism of they were dead and buried around autumn time, then you could make a fair argument that B is probably harsh, but I think somewhere in the middle is probably the right kind of grade. But looking ahead to next season then, Justin, of course, Danny Rowe signed a new contract at Sheffield Wednesday. I think it was always going to be a bit surprising if he were to go anyway, because a club was going to have to pay an extortionate amount of money in compensation to get him. But now he's, put pen to paper on that to make sure that he is staying at the club. So with that being said, that's obviously a great start. So where does that leave your kind of ambitions with Wednesday?
Do you know what? Wednesday's so tricky to really nail down. I think the reason why, it's quite an obvious reason why, is Chansiri. I just don't know where, if he gets his mitts on it, they're not really like, I don't like that. If Danny Rowe's in control of things and there's a good, football philosophy throughout the football club, I'd be convinced of them pushing a lot higher than 20th for starters. I think Danny Rowe's such a talented coach, such a likeable guy as well. I mean, he's doing the bloody ITV punditry for the Euros, for goodness sake.
Busy man. He's a wanted man in more than one way.
Exactly, wanted man. He's clearly got the charisma as well, which is why we like him even more. But the person who doesn't have charisma is Chansiri. I don't know why I segued it that way, but I've done it. If Chansiri just gets his mitts on it, then he can really, really fuck a nice thing up.
Well, speaking of that, I'm just looking at reports from the past few days where Chansiri says he wants to back Danny Rowe, but he wants to do it in the form of loan signings and free signings.
That doesn't fill me with confidence.
No.
This is what I mean by him getting his mitts on it.
To be fair, it can be done where a club can still have quite a bit of success without, splashing the cash,
Luton,
as we've seen.
Luton are a really good example.
Luton are a really good example, as are many others who I'm just neglecting to mention right now. But it's considering they've, put so much money into keeping Danny Rowe at the club, seemingly, trying to get the club progressing in the right direction. You need a bit more in terms of the playing squad as well, don't you? Now that you've got the man in place, give the man some backing. Yeah,
and again, we're not saying go out and spend 10, 15 million pounds in a transfer window, but just commit transfer fees to a couple of players, and really, because that club needs it. The team needs it. The starting 11 needs it. Michael Smith is an old target man now. He's 30, 31, 32. Callum Patterson's, I think he's either agreed a new deal or was in talks for a new deal. Barry Bannon's not getting any younger either. The team needs revitalising. It needs investment in youth. And Chansiri he's never really seen that or shown that because of the amount of money they spent on Dross in the sort of mid 2010s. And, it's really bad recruitment. And you are right, it can be done via free transfers and loan signings, but you've got to be really savvy and really smart. And can we say that's the case with Sheffield Wednesday, or has been the case over the years? I don't think so.
I don't think it's a case where, if I was a Sheffield Wednesday fan, I would still be worried about relegation next season.
Oh, no,
I think that should be okay.
I think that's an obvious one.
I don't see them having a massive push up the table unless, they turn around, which with Chansiri is always a possibility because that his mind changes like the weather. So there is a chance that they could actually do quite a bit this summer and then be actually having a squad put together, which makes you go, oh, it's quite nice actually. But, there is definitely a squad to work with here. I mean, Deshaun Bernard's had a great season in the end for Wednesday. And then, Masaba, Gassama as well.
Yeah.
A couple of young lads who have had really good seasons too. So, there's certainly components of a good side here. It's just going to be interesting to see what kind of backing Danny Rule does get because, Chansiri's saying he wants just loans and free agents, which can be done, but it just depends how clever they are with those loans and free agents, I suppose, doesn't it? Justin, let's take a quick break. After that, we will do the final 6 teams in our gradings for the championship season. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast, and this is part 2 of our season gradings, where we're going through each championship club and giving them a grading based on the season they've just had and looking ahead to next season as well. The first team, Justin, is one we don't have to spend much time on because we have, again, spoken about them at length back in Sunday's episode after they were victorious at Wembley. And, of course, it is Southampton. What grade have you given them?
I've given them an A.
Really?
It seems harsh to not give them an A.
I've gone with a B.
Salty man.
I'm considering you are the man who's been criticising
exactly.
Russell Martin pretty much all season. Yeah. I'm not sure how I'm the salty one here, but I've given them a B because I'm basing my rankings, or grading rather, across the 46-game season as opposed to the final 3 games.
Yeah, mine's full of recency bias because that playoff final, just the way they played, I would have given him a B, and then just the way they played, I was just like, fuck yeah, Russell.
So if it wasn't for the playoffs, what grade would you have given
Probably
them?
A B.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, probably a B. But as I say, like, just the way they performed was just brilliant. I know we've spoken a lot about it, but it wasn't a Southampton performance that we've seen at all under Russell Martin. They've been so leaky. They've been so open at times. They've been taking unnecessary risks at the back. Like, the playoff finals as Brexit as you get from that team. It was incredible. It was great. It was such a.
I wouldn't say Brexit.
No, okay.
Brexit would be parking the bus.
Parking the bus and launching it long. That would be very Brexit.
This was a controlled masterclass.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you ruined my thing now.
You're the one who came out and said it was Brexit.
It was
when it was not Brexit at all.
Come on, you got Matt Letizia, who's a fan, and Rishi Sunak's there as well. He says it's Brexit as you get.
Okay.
But nonetheless, the reason why I've given them an A is because it's just the way they performed in the playoff final. It was just a brilliant, brilliant performance, and that's what gives me a lot of encouragement for next season in the Premier League.
Yeah, it will be fascinating to see how they do in the Premier League. Of course, a lot of work needs to be done, but we have spoken about that at length in Sunday's episode. So if you want to hear how we think Southampton will do in the Premier League at this very early stage, make sure you go back to listen to Sunday's episode. Let's go on to our next club, Justin, and that is Stoke City. What grade have you given them?
I've given them a D.
I've also given them a D.
That being said, they've met expectation of finishing lower mid-table. So therefore you could give them an A.
They've finished in the Stoke void, haven't they?
Yes.
Where they've been stuck in now for 5 seasons?
Yeah, like that thing in Batman. Yeah. That pit that Bane comes out of. And
I see.
That's where Stoke are. That's the Stoke void.
Fine.
Yeah.
Where's relegation?
Oh, I don't know.
Just dying in the void.
Yeah, exactly. Essentially, Stoke were born in the darkness, as the quote goes. But look, I just think...
Do your Bane impression.
Yeah, I'm not going to do a Bane impression.
I was born in the darkness.
Yeah, Stephen Schumacher saying it to the rest of the squad. Or Tony Pulis. Wow, this has got off beat.
Oh, I love it though.
Look, it's another season where Stoke have had a busy summer. They've started poorly, sacked another manager before finishing 17th. So this is their own brand. They've done a very Stoke thing. This isn't biased. This isn't an anti-Stoke narrative. Stoke have thrown money at the wall, and again, they finished 17th. That's it.
Yeah. You're not wrong, Justin.
So why? There's no reason to give them.
It's a very Stoke season, isn't it?
It's a very Stoke season.
Unfortunately, right, and it's just difficult to see when Stoke are ever going to get out of the Stoke void. I mean, again, I'm seeing reports saying Stoke are making a lot of changes behind the scenes.
Great,
but this also happened last summer as well. but it doesn't do enough to get them out of the void.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you've got to be convinced by a football club. Norwich, for example, are they were on a similar level. They need to refresh, didn't they? And they're doing that. They're proactively taking those measures to refresh and go again. Whereas Stoke are just like, right, Alex Neil didn't work. Let's get Steven Schumacher. Let's do what we do in the summer, and then let's go again and see what we can do next season. It's happened time and time again, summer after summer. There's not been a stable element at that club or a clear picture and identity of that club since Tony Pulis left. And what year was that? Was it 2016, 2015?
Oh, yeah, it was a ridiculously long time ago.
Yeah, we were hairless. We didn't have beards then. We didn't have grey hair. We were youthful.
Yeah.
And so were the rest of Stoke, because it's not been anywhere near as nice for them since then.
Yeah, well, Stoke have some of the richest owners in the whole country, but they are limited in how much they can spend because of financial restrictions. Now,
because they're crap at spending, let's bear that in mind.
That is also the other issue here, that even if they did have that luxury of being able to spend some of that sweet cash, then I'm not sure I have enough confidence in them to be able to spend it well in the first place. Because look, Justin, we were given it the big licks back in the summer after the transfer window closed, so just after the summer. But about how Stoke's transfer window, yes, they brought in a lot of players, but it doesn't seem like there's much of a plan there. It seems like a lot of throwing shit against the wall and seeing what sticks. Not much of it stuck. It was a stick-free wall.
Just slid down the wall and left a big old mess.
Exactly, and that mess was Stoke City in this circumstance, and that's where the concern lies. Yeah. That do I have confidence that Stoke, we're going to see a turning point on the horizon? I just genuinely don't think I do, because why would I? Steven Schumacher is just one in a long line of managers who have come in now who look like they were the right man, and it's not worked for them. And keep in mind, Steven Schumacher has a lot less experience than the managers who have come before him, maybe Nathan Jones kind of similar level, but you see my point. And that's why I'm just not very convinced at all that Stoke are going to be having a completely different season to what we've been used to. And I think if it is going to be different, then I think it's the wrong way.
Well, yeah, that would be the other thing, isn't it? They've looked as relegation threatened this season as they ever have done in previous years, which is a stark reminder of the reality that Stoke are in right now. And what do we say about ownership? We say it all the time. We repeat ourselves over and over again. Bad owners lead to relegation. And unfortunately, despite Stoke owners spending money, they're bad at it, and therefore they are bad owners.
I don't think they're bad owners. I think the people who they've trusted with making the decisions at the club are the ones who are making the bad decisions. But also, we've seen reports in The Athletic from this past season which say there's just something about the atmosphere at Stoke, the kind of the culture at the club, which is just at the moment built on failure, because so many people have come in and tried to change things, and it's just not happened. And when that has happened, and you've had so much churn in every other aspect of the club, you've got to look at, just the core of the club, and that's the real issue here, unfortunately, for Stoke. Let's go to another club who play in red and white, Justin. It's Sunderland. What grade have you given them?
I've gone with a D.
I've gone with an E. Are you regretting that D?
I am,
so to speak.
I am regretting that D. Yeah, it's a big D as well. Look, I think with Sunderland is that the fact that I think everything with Sunderland just lines back to the summer and how below par the recruitment was. I think they signed some promising youngsters, but that's all they did. They signed for the future, and that left Tony Mowbray with a weaker squad than what he had the previous season, which he delivered a playoff finish. And that's a frustrating thing, I think, because the club should have built on that success and they didn't. And ultimately regressed to the point where they finished 16th in the Championship last season, conceded a lot of goals. Results have been null and void, or almost non-existent. Good results, that is. And Mike Dodds has had to, he's gone from being a very good caretaker manager to one that's looked relatively incompetent. The club's going to lose Jack Clark as well, more likely to lose Jack Clark in the summer, because is he going to want to stick around at the club next season? I don't know. The managerless, it's just become what was a very exciting time to a very sort of shrug his shoulders and go, meh, Sunderland.
Yeah, it's self-sabotage on the same levels kind of as Wayne Rooney, isn't it, when they made that Mick Beale appointment. They kind of made a rod for their own back with the rumours linking Will Still with the club, because that got everyone very excited. So when it ended up being Mick Beale, it was thoroughly depressing for Sunderland fans. I mean, even if they didn't have the links with Will Still, I think it would have been quite depressing, but that just, made the come down even worse. And then getting... Dodds in afterwards was just, that didn't work out at all either. The damage was pretty much done by that stage anyway. The thing is, Sunderland were lucky this past season didn't last an extra 5 weeks, because otherwise, I don't think it would have been completely out of the question that they would have been in a bit of trouble with a
6 points above the relegation zone.
Well, you got to keep in mind the likes of Wednesday had picked up a bit of form at that stage. Blackburn were going in the right direction as well. I think they could have certainly been looking over their shoulders.
Yeah, it's quite scary.
So, with that being said, Justin, how do we feel about them heading into next season? The big thing is, right, the trust between supporters and the people running the club has been so severely damaged after this season that Sunderland's hierarchy desperately need to get this appointment right, don't they? Mm-hmm. But even then, I think anyone other than Will Still will leave supporters very upset. And I mean, there have already been reports that it's not going to be Will Still.
It's probably not going to be Will Still, because Sunderland aren't as attractive a club as they were in November, October time, are they? Let's be honest. And I do think they've got a lot of potential as a playing squad, but this is a club that's now low on confidence. The fans aren't confident. The players aren't confident because the form showed that. So it almost feels like they've reverted back into that Sunderland turtle shell, haven't they? That they were years ago, and it's quite sad, obviously, because the club was going in the right direction literally 12 months ago. So I think with Sunderland for next season, I think it's just a case of let's see who they get as manager. I can't say whether they're going to push on to be a team pushing for the playoffs or a top half team just yet, because I'm not convinced that the ownership are going to make the right decision.
The thing is, I really like this Sunderland squad. There is so much talent here, even with Jack Clarke going out the door. There is so much talent still here in this team. Dan Neil, Pierre Acquard, Joe Bellingham, Trey Hume, Dan Ballard. I could keep going on. There is so much talent here that I should be looking at this team and thinking, top 6 kind of direction. Yeah. But because of how badly everything has gone in the past 6 and a bit months, it's really making me question that, and it's making me question the judgment of the Sunderland hierarchy. And that's what a lot of the fans are now feeling now as well. And the bad feeling, if things don't improve this summer and they have a serious show of ambition, that bad feeling is only going to continue into next season. And that's not going to be a great start for Sunderland, when this is a club who have made it quite clear that they would like to get back to the Premier League as soon as possible, because they've shown plenty of ambition in different ways over the past few months, ever since they really came back to the Championship, really. But I'm just looking at this thinking, I'm not sure we're going to see a massive turnaround over the next summer. I mean, I could be completely wrong, and they do make an ambitious appointment, which turns out to completely revitalise everything. But at the moment, my vibe level with Sunderland is just so low that I struggle to get massively excited.
It's just underwhelming. That's it, isn't it? You can't get excited by Sunderland because they're not giving you anything to be excited about.
It's a massive club, though.
Exactly. The potential of the football club is there. Everyone knows that. It's a cliche with Sunderland a little bit, but unless that is matched with good decision making, it's pointless.
Yeah, it feels like at the moment the potential of the club is being wasted a bit with these owners. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
It feels like everyone knows there's a lot of potential with this club, but they're not making the most of it. And that's the really disappointing thing with Sunderland at this very moment in time. And let's go on to Swansea City, Justin. I'm actually interested in what grade you have given them, actually.
I've gone with a C. I think it's...
I've gone with a D.
No, I think...
We're not miles apart, so it's fine.
No. I think with Michael Duff, it was very much a D level, wasn't it? Alan Sheehan came in, it was very much a sort of D plus, C minus.
I think Duff was lower than a D, wasn't he?
I don't think it was that.
Yeah, it was.
Careful what I say.
you know, doubting yourself.
I don't think it was terrible.
Okay.
I think it was a bit bit meh. You know what I mean?
Mm.
it's the best way I can put it, really. And then with Luke Williams, I think it was very much a C plus B minus job. So I think C minus, I think, is the best way I can throw in there, because there's a lot to really contend with. I know Alan Sheehan was a caretaker manager, but I think Luke Williams finished really strongly under Swansea, and that's an encouraging thing, because one of the big things that he had at Notts County was how many goals his teams conceded. They shipped a lot of goals. They're very creative and scored quite a few. So Luke Williams has had to adapt a little bit as well, and adapt with a relatively average squad, really. Because I mean, Jerry Yates is a good example. He was signed for big money, and I think under Michael Duff he could have been a decent signing, but he's never going to score sort of 15, 16 goals a season because he's not that clinical, to be really blunt. So he's had to, Luke Williams has had to contend with a squad that's not really built around his style of play. So I think he delivered a fairly good finish.
I mean, I've gone for a D, so I'm not saying it's been a disgraceful season or anything like that. I just think they're kind of in the same category as Bristol City, where they have just had such an unremarkable season because they've not been involved in a relegation battle particularly at all, and definitely not had a look at the top six at any stage. So they're kind of in that category where I think a D is fair. A C for me says slightly above average, kind of average. D is just, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I've gone with a D for Swansea. But looking towards next season, I think I struggle to get too carried away with Swansea because, first and foremost, their recruitment has been very shaky. Swansea fans will tell you that straight away because there was the kind of Q&A session they did with the owners not too long ago where they were saying, we've spent quite a bit of money actually this season, and none of those signings have really come off, which is a completely fair point to make. Having said that, there's still some talented players in this squad, and now they seem like they've got the right man in Luke Williams, who plays the Swansea way. And I think in the long term, he's the right option. But I feel like this is the start of a project as opposed to us starting to see the results of that project. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I do agree. And I think, if maybe this appointment was made in the summer, last summer, I'd be a lot more optimistic about what they can do, because Luke Williams would have a year under his belt, for example. But that's by the by. It's not happened. So I do agree that it is the start of the project. And I think it's an exciting one, but I think the thing that's going to hold Luke Williams and his style of play back is the personnel that he's got available to him. I did say that he finished quite strongly with what is a squad that is fairly unbalanced. They're going to need to replace Carl Rushworth, who's been fantastic for them this season in goal. Jerry Yates, is he going to stay at the club? Because again, he doesn't strike me as a player who can play the way a number
very
9
good.
is. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I tried to butter him up, but yeah, he's a bit shit.
Yeah, well, I mean, I did say this when the signing was made. It seemed like a very strange signing for a Swansea City team. I've never been too convinced about Jerry Yates as a striker, and I struggle to find much encouragement with him being there again next season. But look, there is some talented players in this team, isn't there, Justin? I mean, Harry Darling's someone I like at the back for Swansea. Matt Grimes is just Mr. Consistent, isn't he?
Yeah.
Ronald, who's a Brazilian winger who they brought in January, is someone who has certainly caught my eye quite a few times since coming in.
He's excited the fans as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we need with this Swansea team. So there's certainly some decent tools to start working this project with and start, building towards the future. But if you're looking towards anything too ambitious next season, I think your judgment will be very much misplaced. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I think if Swansea can have aspirations to finish mid-table, I think that would be a very good place to start.
I think
if
they had another season like this, without the turmoil at the start where they were flirting with relegation, I think that would be a good season for Swansea.
It's a good building block, isn't it? And that's what they need.
Yeah.
New project, new manager, young coach, youngish team coming through. Let's start from the ground up. And it is literally starting from the ground up.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go on to Watford. Justin, what grade have you given them?
I've gone with a D.
I've gone with a D as well. I think, carrying on from the point I was just making about Swansea, about them being in the same category as Bristol City, another club who have just been, floundering in mid-table pretty much all season, not really been in danger of going down, not flirted at all with the top six all season. So that's just very much their season. But keep in mind, Tom Cleverley, since he's come in, promising start under him.
Yeah, very promising start. I've been really impressed with him. I think tactically he's really impressed me because he's gone toe to toe with some of the top clubs like Southampton and been unfortunate not to get more results. He's had a really hard run of games in his spell as Watford manager, and he's been chipping away at getting points. He's really stable things, and as well as that, the players look like they were playing under him as well, which I think I made the example during the season. Chris Wilder struggled to get the players playing for him this time last year, and Tom Cleverley's come in, who's not an experienced coach, and he's set up a style of play and a system that got results and got the players on board as well, and that's a really promising sign from a coach who, has made me stand up and take notice.
Yeah, he's made me stand up and take notice, and I think going forwards for Watford, they've got a manager now who can reunite the club, because it was certainly very split with, fans just completely sick and tired of the Pozzos doing their old routine of, hiring and firing. So now they've got a manager who they can put some long-term belief in and see how that progresses. Again, I think, I wouldn't get too carried away with Watford heading into next season, but at the same time, they do have a lot of very exciting young players there. First and foremost, Yasser Asprilla, who is just such a wonderfully talented young player. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that he stays at Watford next season, because I want to see more of him. I mean, Ryan Andrews is someone who Watford fans have been crying out for to be playing more, particularly towards the end of the Valérien Ismaël spell. So hopefully we see more of him. I mean, Wesley Hoyt I'm starting to think it's a bit ridiculous that Watford ever managed to get him in the first place, because I genuinely do think he's a Premier League centre-back, and, Watford have got an absolute star in him. But, there's been quite a bit of turnover already with the likes of Jake Livermore heading out the door. So, yeah, it's an interesting spot that Watford have got themselves in, where they can certainly build around some talented players. Whether they do that or not, I'm not too sure.
I think what it feels like with Watford is they're setting a reset button, both in the playing squad and also the coach. The obvious caveat with Watford
and the
is
philosophy
and
of
the philosophy.
Hiring,
Yeah,
firing.
but the thing is, it can never be too far. That can never be too far away from your thinking with Watford, because
I sure hope it is.
Yeah, but we say this every summer. We say this every summer because they were meant to change their tune with Rob Edwards. They came out and said, we're not going to do that, and they did that. So that's very Watford. And I expected Valérien Ismaël to last the season as a result of learning lessons of having 43 managers in one season, as they did the season before last. And they didn't. They still sacked Ismaël, although results and performances weren't great, so that's more than justified. But for me, I think if Watford are going to be a success, they have to commit to Tom Cleverley and see what he does. Obviously, if he's terrible, then he needs to go. But at the same time, it's a young squad that's coming through. They need a manager with a clear style of play and philosophy, and if Tom Cleverley can deliver that, then there will be a success.
And the players believe in him, and that's the most important thing, isn't it? So if you've got someone who the fans believe in, the players believe in, that's a bloody good start, isn't it? It's just about learning more about him tactically as time goes on, where the concerns would lie. But, it's certainly been a decent start under old Tommy Clevs. The final club, Justin, in our season gradings for this season, West Bromwich Albion. What grade have you given them?
I've given him a B.
Really?
Yeah. Is that harsh?
I've got an A.
Ooh, maybe it is harsh.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm going to go with B.
That seems outrageously harsh, Justin.
Maybe it does.
Keep in mind, the season at the start where,
it's true.
They actually had a weaker squad than the one that ended last season. And, I mean, when I'm giving an A, I'm thinking a large percentage of that is down to Carlos Corberán. But still, I never really thought they'd get into the top six or even be anywhere near it. So the fact they were there pretty much all season and then finished in there pretty comfortably in the end, is absolutely mind-blowing.
Maybe I'm doing Corberán a disservice. Maybe you are swinging me to an A. I think the reason why I probably would mark them down is because they just stumbled over the line, didn't they, into the playoffs? I think that's just...
Your recency bias is clouding your judgment too much.
It really is.
Yeah.
I don't care.
You should care.
No.
I care.
Sticking to my point.
Go on.
Yeah, I just think that stumbling into the playoffs, just took the shine away from what was a really good season. But at the same time, I think an A is more than fair as well, because they have not looked like ever dropping out of the playoffs until April, when they were stunning over themselves. And as well as that, Corberán's got so much out of a squad that didn't get to add to really in the summer. Brought in Mikey Johnson on loan, Yaman Veer and a couple of others in January, and it did prop the squad up nicely. Mikey Johnson had a great impact. So, I think it's more so West Brom had a good season. Disappointed that the way they went out of the playoffs, lost to Southampton in the playoffs. But I'm so high on West Brom right now. I'm so high
next season.
For next season.
Yeah.
I'm backing them to do really, really well. To do really, really well. Mainly because it's new owners. There's not that burden of what's going to be. Will we have a club at the end of the season? Carlos Corberan's arguably the best tactician in the Championship. It's exciting. It's really, really exciting.
I could not agree more, Justin. I'm also very excited about West Brom, and you're right. There's so much of that which is reliant on Carlos Corberan staying. I don't think there's any question that he'll leave, as far as I'm concerned. It wouldn't surprise me if there's a bit of interest, I suppose, but from other clubs. There should be, considering the job that he's done this season. But I'd be very surprised if he's not there next season. And that is a massive cause for encouragement because, as you rightly say, he's probably one of the greatest tacticians in the Championship heading into next season. And the job that he's done this season has been absolutely phenomenal. He's achieved a pretty comfortable top 6 finish with a squad which was weaker compared to the one that we saw at the end of last season, as we just said. And if he's doing that with those tools, what can he do with an even better set of tools? You know what I mean? With these new owners who will hopefully be backing him, then that's thoroughly encouraging heading into next season.
And I think the exciting thing about Corberan is we've never been able to see him flex his muscles with a squad that he's able to freely move around with. Because Huddersfield, he was cash strapped, weren't able to recruit extensively or at all. Or actually attract a calibre player who are really top draw. And then obviously with West Brom, he's come into an ownership problem where the club's not invested in the squad. And he's had to just play with the cards he's been dealt with. And he's done that really, really well. He's done it really well with both sides, both Huddersfield and West Brom. So actually to not have that hanging over him going into the summer, obviously not expecting West Brom to spend 10, 15 million pounds, but just being able to go out and show interest in a player, it's got to be nice for West Brom.
Yeah,
and Corberan.
They were massively limited, weren't they, in what they could do last summer. So now that they don't have that being held over their head, that's a great start. Of course, parachute payments have come to an end now, but that's jargon speak, which we won't bother talking about. But it's a much more rosy financial future for them. And then that means when you're looking at the playing squad, it'll be interesting to see what kind of situation it is in. There is obviously concerns with players probably heading out the door, the likes of, Cedric Kipre. Will he be hanging around? Is, after the season he's had, you'd love to keep him around. I've seen that they're looking to sell Darnell Furlong this summer. So that'll be interesting. And plus, they've had a few players who have, out of contract who have already headed out the door. Will they get the likes of Mikey Johnston back? They'd like to, considering how good he was since he came in January. So that'll be another thing as well. But then you've got the likes of Tom Fellows, who's had a remarkable few months. And if that trajectory continues, he could be an absolute stalwart for West Brom next season.
Yeah.
And then, it's strengthening in other areas as well. So there's a lot of reasons to be encouraged about West Brom next season. I don't think top 2 is out of the question at this very early stage. Of course, a lot needs to happen in the summer for that kind of expectation to be realised, but I see no reason why West Brom can't build upon the season they've had when you've got a manager who is bloody good as Carlos Corberan is.
Exactly. I can't disagree with that. Corberan's always the big tie. If you've got a good manager, the possibilities and potential of your team is endless. If you can back him with a good squad, it's going to be even better. So props to. I think again we spoke about it a minute ago, but if wouldn't be surprised if Corberan gets interest. He should get interest because he's done such a good job. But if he stays at West Brom, which he's likely to do, it's going to be a really, really exciting season.
What's the new owner of West Brom called again? Patel, isn't it?
Yeah,
Patel. Back him. That's all we want. So let's hope that happens. And then hopefully we can see West Brom, realise the potential that they have right now. And considering where they were, 12 months ago, where it looked like they were in serious danger of potentially going out of business, very exciting times. It'd be quite the turnaround in the space of 12 months or so, wouldn't it, Justin? 24 months, you see what I mean. Ladies and gentlemen, so this has been the Second Tier podcast, and this has been our gradings of every Championship side this season, and we're giving them a grade to, sum up their season, essentially. But let's quickly rattle through each team, Justin, and just remind the listeners of what they have got. So we'll start off with Norwich City. I've given them an A-. How about you?
I've gone with a B. I've given Plymouth a C-.
I gave them a C. For Preston North End, I gave them a B.
I went with a C+. And for QPR, I gave them a B.
I also gave QPR a B. For Rotherham United, a big old F.
I went with an F for Rotherham as well. And for Sheffield Wednesday, I went with a C+.
I gave Wednesday a B. For Southampton, they got a B as well.
They got a big old A from me. And for Stoke City, I went with a big old D.
A big old D. I gave them a D. Not sure it's as big as Justin's D, but, it's not the first time I've said that. Sunderland, I gave them an E.
I actually went for an F with Sunderland. And for Swansea City, I went for a C-.
I gave them a D. For Watford, I also gave them a D.
I gave Watford a D as well. And for West Brom, I went with a B.
Yeah, I still think that's harsh. I gave West Brom an A. But ladies and gentlemen, this has been our rankings of each championship side in the division this past season. And we'll be back again on Thursday for a news episode where we'll be talking about all the latest news from the championship over the past week. So we bloody look forward to seeing you again for that. But this has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.